is September 13th still, and I just made a post, I guess, asking for apology, or asking for forgiveness for inadvertently offending some individuals who I didn't intend to offend, or mean to offend very deeply when I have been under duress and in the middle of being assaulted and tortured and laughed at the same time while my son is also tortured. So I just wanted to say that to start. Before going on to talk about the S.S.A.s. And I will also state that last night, after I put up my post from September 11th, 2012, I slept better last night. I wasn't being tortured all night, and I woke up without being tortured. Although after I made this last post today from the 13th, they began to trigger things to my ear again, and they had stopped everything. But towards the end of in the middle of my clip, while I was making it, they started to do that, and then they continued. So it's definitely involving the United States military, Department of Defense, and definitely the aerospace industry, which is sometimes even more frightening. And you wouldn't think, I actually never suspected NASA at all as having any part in any of this, but they are the group that helps to fund this kind of thing. So, and since it sometimes involves satellite technology and other very long distance things, and it does involve NASA. And the hospital that first implanted me, they got most of their grant monies from NASA and the Department of Defense after they did what they did. So if it sounds weird, it is weird. And I did try to file for habeas corpus most recently. That was my most recent attempt to get justice. And it was directed to a judge that was basically concealed the whole thing, tried to alter my motion, left my son out of it. I was petitioning for both myself and my son. He changed it, and judges aren't supposed to do that. And then he also tried to say that that it was completely implausible and that it was frivolous. And of all things, for this judge to try to say, his name was Clark, and for him to try to say that a petition for habeas corpus is frivolous is one of the most extraordinary excuses that I've ever heard of. I am not quite sure that very many judges anywhere would categorize a habeas corpus petition as frivolous. I believe that was an attempt to try to discourage me from making further lawsuits or filing other petitions, because there is a law that if you make too many quote-unquote frivolous lawsuits or petitions, you are blocked from making any kind of lawsuit at all. And since so many criminals have been involved in torturing me, and in the MK Ultra program, torturing my parents, torturing me, and then trying to access and use my son, since I have in the past been successful once or twice filing lawsuits, I don't think they want to see that happen again, which is part of the reason they've done what they've done to me. So, this is not frivolous. And I am now going to talk about, I guess, the S.S.A.s. from the FBI. So they came to my door and showed their ID and information, and I let them in. There was one housemate there at the time. Prior to their arrival at my house, or at the apartment, I had moved out of my own apartment, and the one where the FBI, they had been in the house. And I had moved a lot of my boxes and information. I was commuting back and forth already between Washington State and Oregon State. Something occurred with Dylan at his house after I met with Krista Schneider and Ryan Barnes and some people at a restaurant. And I can go into that later, but after that, I burst into tears. I just could not believe that the same thing just continued, and I didn't feel safe in the state of Oregon. The FBI was refusing to take my complaint of hate crimes. I was a victim of hate crimes. They were excessive, and I was not safe in Oregon, so I decided I would commute back and forth, still go to college, and still attend my lawsuits, but I would live most of the time in Washington State. And so I was commuting. I took a lot of my boxes and personal items to my grandparents' house for storage, and then I had a friend that I stayed with just every now and then, not very often, but as a guest, at the apartment. And when I still had my apartment, I had the FBI business card on my countertop, and somebody went into my house and took it because it was gone. And nobody else had the key other than the apartment manager and possibly a utility worker. And there was a man that I had to call in to look at my house, because then there was some sort of a very black round mark coming in from the ceiling in the kitchen, and I guess it was black mold. He said, "How long has this been here?" And I said, "I don't know, I just noticed it started coming through the ceiling, textured ceiling stuff." And later, I believe that I did find out that that entire complex had to be shut down for a short time because of black mold. And I don't know if they tore it down or if they just completely redid it. But at that time, I was living in a house that I guess was full of black mold. So I then had two roommates. One had a father who was involved with the military, and then the other one was interested in, I'm not sure what he did, but he was interested in like WWF wrestling, and he was gay. He was openly gay. So there's nothing romantic about staying with them every now and then at all. It was just sort of a house arrangement. And that's the place where I was met by the FBI. I think that actually there was no one else home, and then later the gay roommate came home while the FBI was there, so he saw them there. And then he kind of freaked out. I'm not sure. I think he wondered if I was in trouble or if I'd done something, but that wasn't the case. I didn't give anybody information about what I talked about. So the one man was, I believe his name was Lance, and he was from Washington, D.C. He said he was a Mormon, But, you know, I've met some Mormons that are Mormon, and they act like Mormons, and I've met a few people that I really believe that, well, I've met other Mormons that don't seem to be Mormon at all, and find the structure of the Mormon Church to be very convenient for facilitating more CIA-type operations, because they have to go overseas for missions, then they travel around. I don't know, I've met some people that definitely don't seem to be, using the church for their own reasons. And I think that's probably true with every church. You've got people like that. But he also said that he was, I later found out that he was a U.S. military person in charge of like extraordinary rendition events in Iraq, which was basically picking up people who were suspected terrorists and taking them into the helicopter and then whisking them away to a prison, like Guantanamo Bay or some other detention holding facility. So sort of interesting that of all the people they chose to come interview me, one of them has done that kind of work. The other individual was Don. It was named Don, and I've mentioned both their last names in the past. He was from Palo Alto, California, and Italian. And then it was the two of them. I believe that Don also went to the Catholic University of America or whatever in D.C., which is also a university that Brother Ansgar Santagrossi went to before he became a monk, he's the monk that I had reported to the abbot Nathan Zadro, and then had this huge thing unfold over. And I should add that Michael Santagrossi, Michael was his original name before he took his monk name of Ansgar, but he was not just an unknown monk. I didn't realize that he is considered to be extremely valuable to the Vatican, and I had no idea. And they fly him all over the place for lectures and to give seminars. He's a philosopher. He knows 7 different languages. They consider him to be a genius, and he's very conservative Catholic, or he was. So he was also a professor of philosophy at the Mount Angel Abbey Seminary, and I believe that he was Italian, from an Italian family. So when I was bringing something out that had something to do with them, I didn't realize they're probably looking at their pocketbook, in addition to reputation and other things, because he was very well known in France, and very well known in clerical and clergy and monastics circles. So it was a much bigger deal than just talking about some Joe Schmo monk, I guess. His father also worked in the chemical industry. Not sure what he did with that, but chemical industry typically means Defense Department in some way, or pharmaceuticals. So I found out Don went to the same university about the same time. Other than that, I didn't have a lot of information about him. They both sat down. They were both tired. They had flown in from wherever they flew in from. I offered them coffee. They said they were fine.